Regulation H has officially begun, and today we are going to be taking a look at some of the top teams in the format that are emerging as of right now. Kicking this list off, we have what is known as the standard balance team, or the King Gambit Gengar team that's been rolling around, absolutely dominating a lot of the early tournaments. We've seen some new variations of this team pop up, but this is the basic skeleton. This is where a lot of these teams are basing their ideas off of. So we're going to go through it really quickly. Mirror Herb on the Tauros. It's kind of a pretty standard set, guys. You want to be doing damage with this piece. Mirror Herb is that way when you lead it into things like King Gambit or anything that's going to give themselves a stat boost. You get to take advantage of that. So now you can, like I said, lead it into King Gambit. You get the +2, just like they get the +1. You can just technically take the Volcarona, so if the Volcarona tries to Quiver Dance up on you, you at least get a speed boost out of that as well, and a special defense boost, of course. The special attack boost does not matter, but you get what I'm saying, right? So you're trying to punish them setting up on you, and then dealing damage back because of that, which is still technically a very strong option. We've seen a lot of new adaptations that roll over to Life Orb or Clear Amulet here on this piece, but I think as a whole, Mirror Herb is technically one of the better skeletons for a Tauros item on this build. Other than that, guys, it's pretty standard. Terra Grass is very nice to get around some of the Amoonguss stuff. Covers a lot of your weaknesses really, really nicely. And then you just close this out with pretty common Wave Crash Close Combat, Auger Jet for priority and Protect. Moving right along, we have the Gengar, which in my opinion is one of the more up in the air pieces on this composition. It's just not quite fast enough to be the fast sweeper, and it just doesn't do enough damage. I mean, it's really, really cool. We've seen some Terra Poison ones. We've seen some Terra Stellar ones as well. But as a whole, this is meant to be that wall breaker, right? It's meant to break the Rillabooms. It's meant to just hit things super hard on that special side. It's almost like, remember when King Gambit Fluttermane was a core? It's like Fluttermane at home in a sense, where it's just out here trying to hit things as hard as it possibly can. And then you have the added benefit of just having that Dondozo matchup, where chances are Dondozos aren't being built to outpace this right now, and you're just going to be capable of getting Gengar on the board. You're going to click Haze, and all those boosts that the Dondozo was wanting to go for are now gone. So that is a nice little added benefit to the Gengar here, which is why I think the Gengar version is still running around, because I've seen a few other versions, right? Like we've seen like Primarina on this team instead of Gengar. I've seen Glamora on this team, but I think Haze on the Gengar is really what's keeping it around right now. Like, yes, you can do damage, but I don't think it's as much damage as people are making it out to be. But Haze definitely is a reason I think Gengar is still incredibly strong. Clefable's a wild one to me. The uptick in Clefable I was not ready for going into Regulation H. I was fully sold on Clefairy was going to be the better of these two redirectors, but Unaware has a very crazy niche, and it's really, really cool to see, because you can just wall out the mirror match. And, you know, you can just lead Clefable in front of that setup King Gambit, which we'll get into later, and you can just ignore it, right? They're mono dark moves, so the Kowtow Cleaves and the Sucker Punches, they aren't touching you, because even if they get the +6, it's acting as if it's neutral because of Unaware. You can do a lot of cool things with this piece as well. The Helping Hand is probably one of the more consistent options. We've seen a few skill swap options for the mirror as well, because what you're able to do there is you can skill swap the Unaware onto like your Volcarona in the mirror match, and then you can just Quiver Dance up. And unless they have skill swap too, chances are you're winning that mirror at that point. You can also do some cool things versus Dondozo here. You can skill swap Intimidate. You can put the skill swaps for the Unawares on King Gambit. Get your King Gambit to +6, and then you can like Sucker Punch the Dondozo. A lot of things you can do with skill swap. I think it's a cute little tech move that's kind of been popping up on this team. But I would still say that Helping Hand on as a more consistent basis is going to be what you see on this Clefable. Volcarona, guys, there's two options here. It's Covert Cloak or Leftovers. Since this is your main setup piece on the team, I have really liked Covert Cloak. When I first built the team, or when I first thought about the team, you know, Leftovers felt better to me. Like, why would I want Covert Cloak? I'm setting up anyways. But not being able to get faked out, not being able to get snarled down, not being able to get speed dropped by like Electroweb or Icy Wind, it feels incredible. You just get to go for your setup, and there's not a lot your opponent can do to stop that. If they can hit you super hard, you have the redirection, you have the fake out, you have the intimidate, and you can just set Volcarona up and go like crazy. There's a lot you can do with the Volcarona. I don't think Quiver Dance, Giga Drain, Heat Wave is anything new. We've seen set up Volcarona for a lot of this metagame already. And water type, I think there is room to play here. You can go water, you can go grass, you can go, I think I've seen a couple dragon ones as well. I know fairy's cool. I don't think we've seen fairy yet, but a fairy could be a cool option as well. But I do think water, grass, or dragon are probably giving you your best defensive options. And then honestly, it's just a really good setup piece. But Rillaboom, AV, Fake Out, Woodhammer, U-Turn, Grassy Glide, guys, there's nothing to talk about here. This is just a Rillaboom. We've seen Rillaboom day in, day out. Pretty much every format Rillaboom has been allowed in. We know what it does at this point. Really nice for the grassy terrain recovery for a lot of this team, especially on the setup Volcarona, the setup King Gambit. And speaking of the setup King Gambit, you go Swords Dance, you go Terra Dark, you go Black Glasses. And your game plan here is to get one or maybe a couple Swords Dances off. And once you get to that boosted attacks, you're basically just removing anything that's in your path. If they're faster than you and you need to Sucker Punch because you are going to die, you click Sucker Punch. If they are not threatening a knockout on you, you just click Kowtow Cleave. And overall, it's a very good core. I probably won't go through every single mon on every team, guys. But because this was like the balanced team, you're meant to be looking at all of these pieces as what can they do as a whole, as well as what can they do, because you're going to be reactive, right? It's a balanced team. You're not forcing a lot of issues. You have issues you can force the issue with like follow me setup, but you can also just kind of react. You have a lot of balance options, so I kind of wanted to lay out those options. And I'd say more often than not, you're seeing like Clefable Volcarona, Clefable King Gambit, Rilla King Gambit, something like that. You're trying to get those pieces set up. But what I like about the team is there's so many options because you have the ability to adapt to what your opponent is doing as well, and you're not going to be completely cooked by anything that, like, nothing crazy right now outside of like some crazy hyper offense teams is really going to cook you, and it feels like it's playable into a lot of the current metagame, and I think I like that. Moving on, we're going to the standard Pelipper, Archaludon, Basculegion teams that are running around, and this is what I would say is a more standard one, maybe the more opening day Pelipper Basculegion core. But the concept here is you're setting up Rain with that Pelipper. You have good coverage with Hurricane and Weather Ball as you normally do. Archaludon is a force to be reckoned with. Terra Grass is very nice because you get around some of the Amoonguss stuff, the redirection, you can't get put to sleep. And then you just hit things hard. Flash Cannon, Electro Shot, you get the secondary option of damage if they start snarling you down or they start whittling you down with the mitigating your special attack. You can just start dropping body presses, right? You have a lot going on for you here. Amoonguss obviously very good redirection. Incineroar very good support as they always have been. These two are always going to be strong. Basculegion is a fun one because Wave Crash, Choice Band, Terra Water into Rain is removing a lot of the metagame. You build your Basculegion faster than Archaludon, so that way you can lead Basculegion Arch or have Basculegion Archaludon on the board at any point. You can flip turn for big damage, get your Rain in, and then all of a sudden just start Electro-Shotting. That's kind of the concept of how you want to build those two. Other than that, I'm not a big fan of giving out spreads because I frankly don't know them. But that I know for sure is the case here. The Basculegion should be faster than the Arch for your ability to click flip turn into the Rain to get your Archaludon going. Other than that, I mean, the Goldengo, we've seen a lot of changes in this last slot. I know a lot of teams have actually dropped the Goldengo. There's new variations as well, which I do have a new variation of a similar team after this one. But Goldengo, guys, it's Make It Rain, it's Shadow Ball, it's Nasty Plot. In this case, you can probably go Choice Specs. If you go Choice Specs, you probably want more speed control, so you definitely go Tailwind. You can go Wide Guard here if you're scared of the Psy Spam stuff with Expanding Force, but I frankly don't think you need to be here. You have an Incineroar, you have a Goldengo, you can cover that up pretty well. And as a whole, it's just, this is your standard Rain team. You have options to set the Rain, you're going to try and stay in the Rain, and you're going to try and take full advantage of that while you can. And it just gives you options. That's what I like about weather teams, is that you have options for whether it's, lead Basculegion Archaludon. Are they going to switch the Basculegion out and click Electro Shot, or are they switching Archaludon out to speed up the Basculegion, right? You have a lot of options when it comes to the Rain core or the Weather core in general. And then you pair this with just really defensive pieces, and this team goes really, really well. It flows very, very nicely. Archaludon is an absolute force to be reckoned with in the metagame. My one main concern with this team would be like a well-positioned ground type could kind of get the job done, because if you can get the ground type in after the two Rain Sitters are gone, it kind of goes a long way, right? But as a whole, this is kind of that standard Archelon build that we saw a ton at the beginning of the format, at the beginning of Regulation H. It still is the beginning of Regulation H, but you get what I'm saying. It's probably going to get adapted on, but as of right now, it's still definitely one of the top teams in the format. Moving on to the next Archelon Pelipper team. I said this was a more updated version. It's really just more of a playing mind games version, in my opinion. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing in this format. It's very similar to like the 2-2-2 Dondozo teams. It's what am I going to lead? It's not quite that level, but it's what am I going to lead? Because I have options to go like Mouse Hold, Annihilate, and we've all seen Mouse Hold, Annihilate do cool things, where you can beat up the Annihilate, boost a Rage Fist immediately, and Mouse Hold is just incredible support. But you can also go Mouse Hold Archelon. And Mouse Hold Archelon covers a lot as well. The fighting weakness is redirected to the Ghost type or the Terra Ghost on a Mouse Hold if you want to burn your Terra. So it's not really safe to start launching fighting type attacks. If they start bringing fairies to deal with the Mouse Ape, you can lead Mouse Archelon. I think guessing the lead is a huge part of this, whereas this team you can have just leads that you can deem safe into other teams, and other teams can't really lead safe into you because they can't cover Mouse Hold Annihilate, Mouse Hold Archelon, Pelipper Archelon, right? And then they also just have like a Scope Lens Hydreigon. So if like you somehow if you can somehow cover all of these lead options here, I don't think you're going to be able to cover the Scope Lens Hydreigon next to a Rage Powder or next to Follow Me as well, right? A lot of really cool setup options, a lot of really cool ways to force your opponents into trying to lead certain things. But it's not a team for me because I do still feel like, if like you think you guess the lead wrong, you're kind of in a bad spot, although you can pivot out, but you're kind of on the back foot right away, right? You go Mouse Hold Annihilate and they lead their Mouse Hold Annihilate counter. Kind of feels bad, right? Whereas you could have just guessed something different and you could have covered that. So it's a little bit of a guess game for me, which I'm not a huge fan of. One thing I did want to talk about was the Sinistra. I really do think Sinistra needs to be used more in the format. I think it is super slept on right now. I haven't seen a lot of teams with it. Hospitality, especially beside Archelon, is disgusting. A lot of teams like to chip Archelon down a little bit and then put it into range of a big special type attack. If they try to do that and Archelon gets chipped, all of a sudden, you bring in Sinistra, you heal it up 25%, and you just go a little bit farther with it, right? And it's not as easy to take down. You always have the mind game of, is Sinistra going to switch in? Is it not going to switch in? Oh, they want Tailwind. They went really, really crazy fast mode. Well, now I have Trick Room, so I'm just going to go slow mode, and I'm going to cook them that way. A lot of options. I think Sinistra adds a huge piece to this team, and I'd be curious to see like if Pelipper Archelon on Sinistra without the Mouse Ape can kind of become something as the format continues to develop as well, because I really do think there is something there, and Sinistra needs a little bit bigger shout out. It needs some usage, and we're not seeing it right now. Scope Lens Hydreigon, probably just here. It looks like it's one of like the Dondozo answers. If you can get this thing going, you just start sending Draco Meteors that are going to crit consistently. It's going to hurt coming off of a base 125 special attack stat, right? We've seen this in Regulation A. It was a very strong option back then, and I'd imagine it's going to be an option now as well. Just Dark Dragon is a very good typing, especially in a format without fairies. As a whole, this team is very, very cool. I'm a little reluctant to say how good it actually is because it does force a bunch of 50-50s, but we've seen teams like this do well in the past. So, you know what? I'm definitely thinking it's probably around and it's probably going to be decent. At least nothing else, it's going to give you a chance with the mind games. So, speaking of mind games, I figured now was a great time to jump into that Dondozo build of the format. This is kind of the Dozo build where we left off back in, I believe it was Regulation C. This is that Dozo build that kind of ended that format. This was that Dondozo build, and now we're seeing it transform over here into Regulation H, sorry, my brain broke. We're seeing it transform into Reg H, but we got the Dondozo. You can go Terra Grass, Wave Crash, Order Up, Earthquake, Protect. Nothing too crazy there, guys. We know what Dondozo Tatsugiri does at this point. Generally, we're seeing either a Specs or a Choice Scarf on this Goldengo. And the concept would be, I have the Dozo Tatsugiri mode, I have the Choice Specs Goldengo Talonflame mode, which hits incredibly hard, so you can kind of chip everything into range, and then Dozo Tatsugiri comes in later. Or you just have this Dragonite Choice Band that can do crazy amounts of damage as well. And then you have a Palmot, because worst case scenario, you lose one of these pieces early, Maybe Palma can come in, Revival Blessing it back up, and you're gaming. But Double Shock and Close Combat are also very good coverage moves right now. Close Combat is very good into the likes of the King Gambits to the Archaladons. I wouldn't mind maybe seeing a Terra Stellar on this, just to make sure that Close Combat gets the KO on the Archaladons. However, Electric is very nice because the Double Shock, you lose your Electric typing. But because you Terra Electric, you no longer lose that typing because you can't remove a Terra type. So you can just spam Double Shock consistently with this Pokemon if you Terra Electric. So I see why Terra Electric is there. But getting that extra boost on Close Combat could be cool as well. But this is that, I hate to say it, but the 2-2-2 build, the Dondozo build, that's going to be forcing you into the mind games. Am I going to lead heavy with like Talonflame Goldengo? Am I going to play it mind game mode, lead Goldengo Dondozo, and make you pick? Am I switching the Dondozo out? Am I switching the Goldengo out into Tatsugiri? I'm going to make you pick, right? There's a lot of options when it comes to this team. You can force your opponent into playing certain ways. And the moment you catch them on a very poor lead or on a passive lead, you can punish immensely. You can punish heavily. And I think there's a lot of offense going on with just these three. And then you get a lot of chip damage done, and everything is too frail. All their Dozo answers end up being gone, or they're too low to actually deal with the Dondozo, and Dondozo cleans. I think there's a lot to be said about this team. I personally am not a huge fan of Dondozo. I've never liked using it myself, but you know what? To all you Dondozo players out there, this is a decent team. This is a decent starting point. We're starting to see the Glamora Dondozo teams creep back in, but this was kind of the building block of Dondozo teams for this format. I've seen a few Palmots get dropped as well. A lot of cool things to build off of here. This is that building block of Dondozo, and on its own, it's still very good, so I figured we'd start with this one. Moving right along to the Psy Spam version of what's going on in the metagame right now, and honestly, Dondozo, Psy Spam, Mouse8, man, maybe this format does suck. No, but in all honesty, it's a very good team, and it's a very good team for a reason. Torkoal is disgusting, okay? Torkoal does a lot of crazy damage. You do not need to have Clear Smog. You can go Eruption, Weather Ball. You tend to see Earth Power. There's a lot of options. Earth Power, Clear Smog. I believe you get Heat Wave as well if you still wanted spread damage after you've been chipped a little bit, which is definitely a cool option. Tons of cool things here. You can even go Choice Specs onto Torkoal if you wanted to. A little bit of extra damage, because why not? But I think Protect is very valuable on this Torkoal, and there's a lot you can do. You can lead Torkoal Lilligant, and then have Indeedee and a sweeper in the back. And Hattering's a sweeper as well, right? Hattering is a very cool option for this Trick Room core. I did have a video go up earlier on the Trick Room cores where I talked a lot about Hattering and Indeedee, so I'll probably go over it rather quickly. But overall, you're probably getting Trick Room up very consistently. And anything you're not getting Trick Room up pretty consistently against, you can either play the mind game where, well, if you're going to really lean into stopping my Trick Room, I can go Lilligant Torkoal. I have After You Eruption. Well, you don't have it on this variant, but you can put After You on this thing and go After You Eruption if you need to. You have Sleep Powder to get out of jail free card if you need to get out of a bad situation. Close Combat hits a lot of things hard. Leaf Blade covers everything that pretty much walls out Torkoal. It's a Rock type, Leaf Blade. It's a Water type, Leaf Blade. Feels really, really good. Another honorable mention here is probably Triple Axle. If I could type. You do actually get access to Triple Axle, which is definitely cool if you're willing to risk the miss here a little bit. There is an option there. I would definitely not get rid of Sleep Powder, because with this team you're trying to force those mind games, and I think having Sleep Powder is one of those mind games on the Lilligant. Where am I going to Sleep Powder? Am I going to actually just send an attack, or am I just going to After You and let Torkoal click Choice Specs Eruption? There's a lot of options with just this lead in general. Now, let's say I cover this lead. Did I cover the Hatterene and Indeedee lead as well? There's a lot of things that are going on with this Psy Spam team where they know their lines. They know how you are going to want to approach into them, and they can just kind of pick, like, okay, they're scared of Torkoal Lilligant. They're going to cover for Torkoal Lilligant. Let me lead Indeedee Hatterene. And then game 2, they're like, oh, that worked out well. They're not going to be scared of Torkoal Lilligant, and I'm going to go back to Torkoal Lilligant, and they're going to get pranked by that. There's a lot of options on it. There's a lot of 50-50s on the lead, and if you can get the lead right, and if they can get the lead right and they can get into Trick Room with this team, it is a very strong option. Like I said, similar to that Mouse8, it forces a lot of 50-50s. It's forcing your opponent to play in certain ways, and you can definitely take advantage of that on a well-built hard Trick Room team like this one. And then you have Gallade, Wide Guard, Sharpness, Clear Amulet, Sacred Sword, Psycho Cut, hit like crazy. And you just get another Trick Room option. So you have 3 Pokemon that can just click Trick Room. They can't stop all of them. Like, I don't think it's possible to cover Indeedee, Hatterene, Gallade, Torkoal, Lilligant, Ursaluna regular with like one lead. I think you have to have a lead that's somewhat neutral and learn and find your lines that are going to get you out of that Trick Room, because chances are Trick Room is either going up or you're going to get pranked by Torkoal, Lilligant. So if you can not get pranked by Torkoal, Lilligant and find a way to get through Trick Room on a lead and on a 2-back Pokemon, that's how you're going to have to deal with this, because you're going to be like, okay, I can lead this into Torkoal, Lilligant, whatever it may be. If they don't lead Torkoal, Lilligant, this lead also gives me the best options of cycling out of Trick Room. And if you can have a lead like that into a team like this, that's how you're going to want to do that. You're going to want to minimize the damage they can do if you get the lead wrong. Now, I'm not a huge fan of hard Trick Room stuff like this, but it works. You're allowed to just click Eruption. Lilligant with Sleep Powder's there. You got a lot of different modes, and you hit a lot of things very, very hard. So it's here for a reason, guys. It's good. It's going to be around. If you hate Psy-Spam, this is going to be something like that you're going to have to see a lot of in this format, so I would just start prepping for it personally. Typhlosion, Whimsicott. Now, this one, I am not sold on any of this team except the Typhlosion Whimsicott part. Typhlosion Whimsicott is the only part of this team that I am sold on. I am not sure about how the rest of this team builds out. There is numerous variants. This was kind of like my honorable mention that I really wanted to talk about, but there hasn't really been that one Hisuian Typhlosion team that's really been dominant. The other cores that I've talked about today, they've all had that like repeat showings with those exact 6 with just minuscule differences on text. This one, there is a lot of options. There's a lot of Whimsicott, Typhlosion, Blood Moon. There's a lot of Whimsicott, Typhlosion, Torkoal. But there hasn't really been that consistent 6, so there is a lot of room to play, right? So I'll probably drop the Indeedee, I'll drop the Torkoal, and I'll definitely drop the Dragapult. I haven't really seen too many of those. But like, this is the core, and I think this does a ton to the current metagame right now. Because if you play the Mouse Ape stuff, your Typhlosion, if you decide to go Jolly, which I do believe you need to go, yeah, you need to go, Timid, excuse me. You go Timid to outpace the Annihilate. You probably just go Max in case you play the Mirror. And you can just send Sunny Day Eruption. What are they going to do? They might Terra Water the Annihilate, but you're putting a lot of pressure. If they have Terra Water, you can cover that. Maybe you have the Blood Moon. Maybe you just set Tailwind Eruption. Let the Typhlosion go down. Blood Moon now comes in. They've taken 40, or they've taken like 60% with each from the Eruption. Blood Moon hits the board. Hyper Voice tidies up. You still have 2 Mons or 3 Mons, and they have 2. You still have 2 turns of Tailwind. They do not. Into the Archaeodon Pelipper Rain stuff. You just click Sunny Day Eruption. They can't switch Pelipper in. The Typhlosion is faster than the Pelipper. They can't reset Rain. It's very, very unlikely that they're going to be capable of shutting that down. They can do some cool things with the Aqua Jet Basculegion before your Sunny Day goes up, so just be careful of that if they are in Rain, because Swift Swim allows the Basculegion to be faster than your Cot, and since Sunny Day and the Aqua Jet are both at +1, they can kind of cook you that way, so just be a little bit mindful of that. But as a whole, I think this is kind of that point in the metagame where no one really knows how to close this out, but they know these 3 are strong, and I'm curious to see if these 3 actually hold out as the meta develops, whether you're going into Baltimore. I think Dortmund is the regional in... Is it Dortmund? In Europe. Either way, there's a regional in Europe as well coming up. There's probably a few other events out there as well that I'm going to be missing. But there are tons of really cool teams right now, and more so than the ones that I just went over. But this is one of those cores that I think is really unsolved, and if somebody can crack it, I think it's going to be incredibly, incredibly strong. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. That is what I consider to be the top teams in the format right now. Obviously, the format is ever evolving. It's so early format that things are going to be changing. So obviously, feel free to take these cores, take the ideas, work off of them. Maybe let me know if I missed any major cores, major teams that are performing really well right now down below. But of course, with that, if you guys do enjoy the video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And of course, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in a future video.